Hello,
Good morning. I'm Jen.
I'm Kimberly, and this is
And
That Vegan Morning Show.
yay, we did it good this time.
We should practice it during our meetings.
We really should. Kimberly and I have meetings every Tuesday night.
We're supposed to get a lot of work done, and it's more just chatting than work. And then we end up doing work throughout the week that we could have done on the call. It's a
Exactly.
process. We're learning.
It is a process, but this is what, like our 23rd show now?
I think
24th?
so. Yeah.
I have
So
to double check. We're something like that. Look at
yeah,
us.
I know. It's amazing.
It really is. How was your weekend?
My weekend was really good. On Saturday, we went to one of the things that we're trying to do. Let me start over. Is we're trying to have an adventure at least once a weekend, and yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm calling it. I'm calling it an adventure because it's way more fun than just making plans. And on Saturday, we went to the Skylands Art Museum, and I kept meaning to post some photos on Instagram, so I'll do that later today. But it's run by a sculptor and her husband, and so all of the sculptures in this museum are made by the woman we met when we walked in and paid our entrance fee, and it was so cool. And because her husband was also there giving us a tour, he gave us insight into the artist, into Eileen, and why she works with the medium she works with, what her thought process is. And it was just so cool to get that kind of insight into the art we were looking at. And then they also have drawings and paintings by other artists, and it was just really cool. It was in a house. So when we pulled up, we were like, oh, we'll probably be here for like 20 minutes. It seemed small when we pulled up. We were there for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, because the tour, he was so full of information. And he a lot of there was like the first floor is based on like fairy tales, and then you get up to the top floor and there's a lot of like Greek or yeah, like Greek art. And so he talked about a lot of why can't I think of the word? Like mythology. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uh and
That's a
it
big
was
word at this hour.
it just was like not coming to me. And it was just so cool. Um and we just left feeling like so inspired, and it was just a really awesome and surprising afternoon. And it was just like we loved it so much. And we were like, she was when we were leaving, she's like, bring your friends, tell your friends about this. And we were like, we're definitely going to do that. And then they're offering next Saturday, or this coming Saturday, like a sketching class, and you don't have to have any, you don't have to be an artist. So we were going to do it, but I have an event, my Oracle card event later that day. And because they're not exactly close to each other, we thought, okay, it's probably a little much to do that. But so we'll keep an eye out, and maybe we'll do the next one that they offer. It was so cool.
I love all of that. Me and Ellie, my husband, we try to, he's my husband, but in case anyone who's watching doesn't know, um, we also like to do, make plans every weekend. I love that you call it a weekly adventure, because we always try to have one day in the weekend to do something, even if it's just walking around in some random town. Or we love art museums. We're big art museum fans. So that just sounds really, really like lovely.
Yeah, it was so cool. If we get a chance when you guys come visit sometime, we should go.
I would love that. And then we were talking about before, I was telling you about Dia Beacon. So would love to show you guys that place. That's an interesting spot to roam around for an afternoon.
Yeah, we would love that.
And you get lovely views of the Hudson River too. So extra bonus.
Yeah. So how was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty laid back. Saturday, I spent Ellie had plans. He sometimes meets up with a photography meetup. So I was home with my son, Joseph. We just spent the day hanging out. He's been away every weekend. He's home from college, if anyone doesn't know. And so he's going back at the end of this week. And so we had a Saturday home together, just us having some quality mother and son time. And it was very
Nice.
lovely. It's nice that he likes to still spend time with me. Um,
Mhm.
I'll take it. Yeah. And then I'm taking him, can't believe, for his third year of college at the end of this week. So
Wow.
I don't know. It doesn't feel that long ago I took him for his first year, and now all of a sudden we're about to start year 3.
Yeah.
And then yesterday the three of us together, had like a family day together. We went to Peekskill, which is another town along the Hudson, and we just walked along the Hudson. And then there's this like place there that's like a brewery, but they also have it's like a not only a brewery, but they have like an arcade and laser tag and axe throwing and different things. So got Joseph like a $20 card for the arcade, and me and Ellie just hung out for a while talking while he was, having fun. You can never outgrow an arcade.
That's true. Agreed.
So he was enjoying himself while me and Ellie were having some time to just kind of like talk about life a little
Mhm.
bit. So
Nice.
yeah,
Remember
and now
that
here we
arcade? What yeah, remember that arcade we went to last year? It was kind of like an arcade, right? When
Oh
we were
yeah,
d yeah, that was
Beacon, yeah,
neat.
there's like this arcade bar in Beacon, which is like 10 minutes away from me, and they have all these like 80s and 90s video games in there.
Mhm.
And that's a fun place to go
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, we
And
had
they
a good
have like
time.
events. They have events there, and I always forget about it. And also, a lot of things happen, like, on weekday evenings, which is just very difficult, like, and I get it, they're probably trying to draw people in during the week because the weekends people tend to have more time, but, yeah, it's hard for us to do something on a weekday evening unless it's, like, a
Yeah.
Friday night, so
Um, so, our topic today feels very relatable and maybe big and small all at the same time. So what are your thoughts on feeling a level of loneliness or feeling kind of out there on your own as a vegan?
that is such a loaded question, and you know what? It's a big motivator for the work that I'm doing now with the Confident Vegan.
Mhm,
And also an inspiration of what we do here, right? Providing space for vegans to connect, because there's not a lot of like news or media places for vegans to tune
mhm,
into, which is part of our mission here. But yeah, I've been vegan for like 8.5 years almost. And it took me 2 years to fully transition to being vegan. What held me back? The fear of how people would judge me for
mm.
being vegan, right? Because I never thought I wanted to be vegan, right? Vegans are weird and opinionated. I then later discovered I'm also weird and opinionated.
Same.
Right? I guess that's why we get along so well, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then I talk about openly all the time how I used to be a really big people pleaser. And I worked through a lot of that in other areas of my life. But then when I had this like strong desire in my heart to become vegan, I was like, oh shit.
Mm.
There's still a part of me that's like wanting to people please here.
Mm.
And I worked on that. Little baby steps. First, I just connected to my own relationship of being a vegan by just exploring it, getting cookbooks. Look, I love a good cookbook. So I started just having fun, making it about the food and exploring. And, when I had an opportunity, if my family wanted to try something, great. But I knew my family was not going to want to be vegan. I wasn't going to try to push it on them. And then as I got more comfortable with vegan food and just loving it, and then really connecting more to the ethical pieces of veganism, um, it got to a point where it's too painful to just ignore.
Mm,
And I was ready to be I was ready to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
I love that.
And yeah, and it was a process. And little by little, each social situation outside of my immediate family, it got better and better. Sometimes not so much, sometimes I would run into situations that were uncomfortable. But what I mean by it got better and better was I built that muscle. Confidence is building a muscle. Um, I, I mean, Kimberly, you're big with public speaking. You have a big public
Mhm.
speaking background, right? When you started
Yeah.
Toastmasters, I'm sure you built a lot of muscles too, right?
Yeah.
And being a public speaker. And
Mhm.
so it takes time when you do something, it feels uncomfortable at first, um, but then you get more comfortable with it. But it was lonely. It still didn't make the loneliness go away. So it's kind of
Mhm.
like, when you feel fear and do it anyway. As a vegan, I have felt lonely and did it anyway. And that's where, social media has been helpful for me. The first person I started following on YouTube goes by the Vegan Zombie, Chris Cooney. He's also a Syracuse native. I was very excited to find
Nice.
that out. I was like, oh, yay. And sometimes I see him going to places in Syracuse, and I'm like, oh, I remember that place. But he kind of helped me manage that loneliness, like, because he will have family gatherings. Not everyone in his family is vegan, but like his family was so supportive. And so he would sometimes just show like holiday gatherings with his family, or like cooking adventures with his friends, or just him chatting about his vegan story. And so that was like my first connection to someone on social media sharing their journey as a vegan, and watching that helped with that loneliness. And
Mhm.
so what's helped me is connecting with other vegans, either on a YouTube setting. Facebook groups have been helpful. Now a lot of them seem to have gone very spammy and scammy, but
Mm.
in the beginning, there seemed to be more legit people posting and sharing on those things, and that was also kind of helpful. And then what really was helpful was connecting with actual people, joining business groups like the Vegan Business Tribe. That took that helped me realize that I was still lonely in ways I didn't realize I was lonely. And then when I started connecting with people, more and like in an in-person type of way, even if it was over Zoom, that
Mhm.
helped me through all of that more. But yeah, I feel like for me, being vegan is can be, everybody feels lonely, I think, at some point, unless you live in a perfectly vegan world, which we don't, but we're working on it.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, it's just, for me, it's having to cultivate the, you know, skills of just embracing that, and communicating that, and just, again, connecting to that why is this important to me, um because I can't I don't want to support the horrible things that happen, to animals in so many ways. And so that's more important to me than, trying to fit in with other people.
Yeah.
What
That's
about you?
perfect. Well,
Oh.
I think that that really your last sentence there really captures a lot of, I think, what vegans experience. I was talking to JP about it last night, so I wanted to get his take on it. He's had a
Mhm.
different experience than you or I in that he went vegan because he was inspired by a person he lived with, so he already had a vegan person that he was very connected with, me, in case anyone is not clear on that. And so he always felt like even if it was just me, he had like this little vegan community, and he's like, I've just never felt lonely because I don't really think about it in the bigger picture. He's not
Mhm.
he'll talk about it when people ask him, but he's not one to be like out in front of people or that kind of stuff. We all show up in different ways, and that's not his. And then my mom is vegan too, so he even has a little bit of extended like
Mhm.
immediate family where he feels like we're all kind of in this thing together. And then for me, I I went vegetarian, was vegetarian for a long time, and it never mattered if people had a problem with that. And so while I felt very lonely, I was dating and I was dumped by many people who were like, I can't handle this vegetarian thing. And it left me feeling alone and that I would never find a partner. But it was never enough for me to be like, well, maybe I just won't do this anymore because it's too hard to be in the world and try to make, stand up for the animals and try to make my point around not consuming them and what we do to them and how awful it is and that we shouldn't want to be engaged in it and we should find other ways to live. It was never an option. The animals always were going to come first. And so while I felt like, oh, well, I guess maybe I will just be alone, even as a vegetarian, it was kind of like, okay, it just was such a strong thing that there was no way that I wasn't going to do it. And so I did feel like really lonely for a long time. Most of the time I was vegetarian, I didn't know even another vegetarian, let
Mm.
alone a vegan. And so I didn't have a community of people who really understood. I was lucky enough that there were people in my life who were like, okay, you're vegetarian, we'll deal with it. And they would accommodate, make sure there was food for me or whatever. But and while people saw it as becoming so much of my personality, it was kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so I didn't really have people to talk to. I don't remember like the first people I started following on social media, or I didn't spend a whole lot of time like searching YouTube. Now that we're on YouTube, I spend more time on YouTube. But historically, I'd go there for clips or to watch something funny, and then kind of I was never searching for things on here, and I realize how much I've missed out on by not doing that. But my first cookbooks were by like Isa Chandra Moskowitz and Terry Hope Romero, and their work together, they're both just so fucking cool that it was like, these two are so cool. And like I can kind of be in their world and I have their
Mhm.
cookbooks and learn how to, and like I've said many times, when I first went vegetarian, I couldn't cook at all. And so it was a real learning curve for me. But I was inspired by them, and they were living these like very cool lives, and post-punk kitchen, and it just felt like, yeah, this is, they don't know me and I don't know them, but I feel like we're in it together. And
Mhm.
so I kind of felt a little supported that way. But where I still feel kind of lonely now, and we do have a huge vegan community that you and I are both part of, and people are all around the world. And
Mhm.
so I feel very supported, but I feel lonely in that we are still such a small group. Vegans make up like 1 to 2% of the entire planet's population. And like being small is not in and of itself making me feel kind of lonely. What does it is when I see things on social media, and I know they're keyboard warriors and people who say things just because what they're trying to do and what they enjoy most is upsetting another person.
Yeah.
And so people will post really awful, sad, disgusting things about animals and, just trying to make, oh, the poor like vegan cucks and soy boys, like make them sad and feel awful. And so I know there are people that are like that, but then there are also people that just don't get why we're vegan. And
Mhm.
and it's not even just people who have never met a vegan or never heard of veganism. It's people who have and still are like, that's stupid, or like, I would never give up eating animals. Like, I need it, or I just like it. And there's no thought beyond themselves. And like to think about how far we still have to go and how awful the treatment of animals is, and the idea that, or the knowledge that you can't kill someone who doesn't want to die, and like, or you can't humanely kill someone who doesn't want to die, and these animals have just as much interest in living as we do. That's where I feel lonely now, in the
Mhm.
people who can still know what goes on and be like, "No, sorry, I need to eat, and this is what I like, and so that's what I'm gonna do." That makes me feel really lonely.
Same. Wow. You know, first of all, lucky JP.
Right? I
Hold on,
know.
gotta plug my computer in. I don't want the battery to die. Oh, there we go.
No.
Um, yeah, you paved the way for JP and your mom, right?
Yeah.
And so because of you, they didn't feel lonely in this journey of veganism the way you did.
Mhm.
And hearing that, it makes me realize that we're paving the way, putting ourselves out there, right? Because
Yeah.
because we both have interviewed guests. You on the Did You Bring the Hummus, and me on the Confident Vegan on our other platforms, who've been vegan since like the 80s, 70s, like
Yeah.
a long time. It was even harder to be
Yeah, they were
vegan.
very lonely.
Right. And I became vegan in 2017. And, you know, certainly I'm sure a less lonely experience having the resources I had than then. And so hearing your story, like that's what we're doing. We're paving the way for helping people not be lonely and there or
Mhm.
help at least be there for them in those moments when we feel lonely. Because we're always going to experience loneliness at some point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was just coming up to me when you were sharing that, because you have a different experience than your mom and JP because
Mhm.
you paved the way for them.
Yeah. Hmm. That's pretty cool.
Look at you paving the way.
Look at me. Yeah. So if you're watching now or catching the replay, let us know, like, when do you, or how do you feel lonely as vegan, or where are you finding the support so that you feel less lonely? We'd love to know, and so we can share with others who maybe haven't found that space yet.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to hear your experiences and continue the conversation in the comments.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Kimberly, what about at the workplace?
Mm,
How that can be an area that could be challenging for some people, especially if you work in the food service industry, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm sure that must have some challenges. But yeah, how has it been at the workplace for you as a vegan?
So, interestingly enough, when before COVID, when we were still going into the office, and I've worked at the same place for a very long time. And when I first started there, we got free lunch every Friday. So for the first like 8 years I was there, every Friday, free lunch. And for a big chunk of that, for the first few years of that, I was vegetarian. And the company I work for has a very large South Asian population. So every lunch that was offered definitely had animals in it, but there were always vegetarian options,
Mhm.
and sometimes even vegan ones, but always vegetarian. So most Fridays when I was still vegetarian, I would eat free lunch. But then once I went vegan, my options were really limited at that point, and I would not always have free lunch. So there used to be, people where my desk was, people would walk by. And when I was vegetarian, someone would come by and be like, Kimberly, lunch is here. So I would just get up and go meet JP and everybody else to get online for free lunch. But then once I was vegan, I didn't like announce it to the office, like, hey, everybody, I'm vegan now. But free lunch would come by and like people would walk by and be like, Kimberly, lunch is here. And I'd be like, oh no, thank you. And I can't tell you how many people were like, but it's free. Yeah, I know. But it's free and it's here now. Uh-huh. I'm not eating that anymore. And they were like, what? Like the fact that it was free seemed to be the most important piece of it. And it took some colleagues of mine a little while to wrap their head around, like, oh, okay. Oh, it's not, oh, you're not on a diet. Oh, I thought you were on a diet and you didn't want to eat cheese because you're on a diet and cheese is high in fat. No, that's not it. And then I posted about it one day on Facebook, just that exact experience that somebody walked by, was like, free lunch. And I was like, no, thanks. And they were like, what? And a person commented like, you didn't have to be such a bitch about it. They're just being nice, telling you that lunch is there. Nobody has to tell you shit. And I was like,
oh, wow.
okay. You're right. Nobody has to tell me. They in fact send out an email when lunch gets here, so nobody had to tell me anything. But I wasn't. I just literally
I'm
was
sorry. That's just like, what? Wow.
People are so triggered by these things.
Yes.
And she just chose to focus on the fact that I said no thank you to free lunch, someone inviting me to free lunch, then the fact that, okay, I eat differently at that point. And but that was the most interesting piece of it as far as the workplace goes. When I first went vegetarian, I was working at a very small technical school. And the people, like when I started there, I had just gone vegetarian, and the people were so not into it that I was like, oh, I've been vegetarian a long time, even though it had only been like 2 months, because it felt so much like they were going to try to push me to not be vegetarian. And I just didn't want that. So I was like, oh, I've been doing this a long time. This is really like meaningful to me, like leave me alone kind of thing. and they did, but they like didn't get it. But overall, like outside of those few things, it's kind of, I worked for a food service company. I worked for Aramark for a long time, or not really a long time. I was in the corporate office, like one of the district offices. So I wasn't in a food service environment, but there was often food around because of that, because of working for a place like that in the business dining division. And they always were so accommodating, and it was really nice.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess I've had kind of not a terrible experience. How about you?
Oh, thanks for sharing all of that. Yeah, people do get very triggered and charged, which we'll talk about shortly. This episode I feel like is going to go a little bit extra because we're almost at
Oh,
our
yeah.
time. But you know what? I feel like this is such important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely important to talk about. We can't cram it all in 30 minutes.
No.
But yeah, so when I became vegan, it was about 5 months before I ended up starting a new job. And so when when I was at the other job, I started letting people know. And people seemed to be accommodating. If I went out to lunch with a coworker, we would go to places that had vegan options. Usually, like there was a Thai food place nearby that would be a usual place that I would go because they had some vegan friendly options and it was accommodating for other people. And then Bear Burger was also, which is in the city. They're a non-vegan place, but they have a lot of vegan options. So like Bear Burger, Thai food, things like that. And then there were some other places. There was also a Mexican place. I can't remember the name of it now. I don't even know if it's still there. they also had vegan options, and they had vegan cheese for certain
Nice.
things, and they made things so it wasn't like the beans weren't in like animal fat. So there were some places nearby that I could go. But then I started a different job, and I let people know off the bat that I was vegan. I don't remember how it came up, but it came up pretty early on. And so whenever there was like a function where we would bring stuff in for meetings and stuff like that, my manager always made sure there was like some Oreos or like fruit or just something that was vegan friendly. And then working where I work now, which was actually where I worked before I went to that job. Uh, they they've but in a different department. Also very accommodating. I was there, we were in the office before COVID happened, and everyone was very just understanding. People would just ask questions, and no one criticized me or anything like that. And still there, working from home now, we don't have these in-person events. There's been a couple of occasions, 2 or 3 occasions, where we've met up and we've had like a lunch and like getting our department together on a weekend just to kind of like connect in person and have like a thank you lunch. And my boss has always made sure that, she would ask me to like check out, let her know any suggestions in any restaurants that she found. Always wanted me to like look over the menu first to make sure I was okay with it. So I've always been very grateful and appreciative of that. Include, having me be a part of the where are we going to meet up process. And also I've also been considerate too. Like, okay, it doesn't have to be an all vegan place. I've thrown them out as suggestions, but I always make sure that like I'll pick like 3 different places. One might be like an all vegan place, and then the other 2 are non-vegan places that have vegan options that are more excited than, lettuce leaves on a plate.
Yeah.
And so thankfully, my employers have always been very inclusive and kind to me, and my coworkers have never been jerks or made comments. So I've been very grateful in that. Where it does get hard is so because we work virtually, there's more interactions online, just to keep people connected. So sometimes, I remember like a while back, and maybe it was before Memorial Day, like there was this like virtual barbecue. Like, what are you guys bringing to the barbecue? And everyone's listing all I put down like tofurkey or something, was trying to promote something,
Yep.
fun and exciting there. But like, and then there was like another time people were talking about, I don't remember how this happened, but it was like a group chat at work, and people were talking about interesting animals they've eaten, like rattlesnake and alligator, and talking about all of that. And so it's things like that, which
Yeah.
no one's doing anything to me. No one's disrespecting me. Again, like I've been very lucky to work in places that have been very understanding and inclusive, and have bosses that have been supportive of that. It just because everyone, it's being in a non-vegan world, everyone's like all excited of talking about eating rattlesnake and alligator and what that experiences was like. And I'm just thinking of the individual being,
Yep.
So that's where it's been challenging for me at the workplace, I would
Yeah.
say.
One thing that you triggered a thought for me is where I work, they love all of the corporate buzzwords and phrases. And so I hear the standards, low hanging fruit, that kind of stuff,
Ugh.
but I hear the exactly. I hear there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Ugh.
And every chance I get when I hear that, I audibly react to it. I will say like, "Ugh," or like, "Oh." And I make sure if I'm on camera on Teams, I'll be like, "Mm." And I want people to stop saying that. It's awful. It conjures up an immediate image for me, and it's horrific. And like, why are we saying things like that? So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard at work.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I think sometimes people say things we don't realize, right?
Mhm.
How, I've been guilty of this with like the term, being a guinea pig for something.
Mm.
And then, right? Because there's things that are so embedded in our language that we don't even think about it. But then when we become vegan, right?
Yeah.
We start thinking about everything differently
Yep.
to the detriment of the non-vegans around us. And
To the benefit because they
yes,
get to learn.
benefit. Exactly. They get to learn because of us.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and there's these things that are just embedded in our language. And I feel like that could be a whole other conversation in itself,
We
right?
should do a show about language and how it changes when you go vegan and how we can help encourage other people, whether they're vegan or not, to stop using such language because it's harmful and all it does is perpetuate people's thoughts
Mhm.
that animals are objects to be used or commodities to be profited off of, and they are not. That's a good idea. We should do that
We really should. Look at us coming up with more content ideas.
while we're live.
It's like
Um,
we're having a productive meeting.
yeah, look at us, and everyone gets to be a part of it.
Yeah. And if please, me and Kimberly always love suggestions.
Mhm.
And this episode was inspired by a comment someone left on Instagram. So, any of your comments or questions or suggestions are appreciated because it
Yeah.
allows us to come up with ideas for future content. Because Kimberly and I want to create a supportive space for you, the viewers. So
Mhm.
let us know what you want to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm like looking at the time and I'm like, oh my God, we can go on so many tangents. I want to shift gear. And I feel like we're gonna have to do a part 2 to this at some point.
Yeah.
This was such a great topic. Thanks for bringing it up, Kimberly.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you to Jade for bringing it up.
yes, thank you, Dave, because you really got us inspired here.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I feel like we should talk about before we wrap up is just how to navigate those challenging situations, right?
Mm.
Like, um, you know, you luckily you've been able to have a husband who's also vegan. Mine is not. He's supportive.
Mhm.
But sometimes we have our playful banter about our eating choices.
Mhm.
Uh, and my immediate family has been supportive. Like when I go to Ellie's sister's house or my brother's house, my sister-in-laws have always made sure they're to cook or have food for me and be very inclusive. So I've always been lucky about that. But extended family or other social circles, other gatherings where it can be challenging. You get the comments. We all get the same comments.
Mhm.
You know, Kimberly's making a face. So Kimberly, how about you go first? Like, how do you navigate those less supportive situations?
Me. I wanna give the viewers something they can use, but I it's been a while since I've been in that situation.
Mhm.
So, I may handle it differently now, but, or maybe not. I don't back off from it. Like, if someone's giving me a hard time or, they complain, "Oh, it was just too hard to find something to have for you. I hope you ate before you came," kind of thing, and they didn't tell me ahead of
Ooh,
time.
I didn't.
Um, yeah.
Yikes.
Um, like, I have never once hesitated to just be honest about it, why I'm doing it, who
Mhm.
it like, it's not about me and this one meal that you decided was too difficult to make sure there was something available to me, or you want to just give me shit about my rabbit food or whatever you want to call it because you think that's an insult. Um, to those people, I've just been like, just very clear about how I just don't want to be part of that suffering. And in a world where it's very difficult because animals are used in everything, um, there are some things where you can't get around it.
Mhm.
Or, even, taking public transportation, you're riding in a bus where the tires, and this is the same for a lot of tires, cars that we buy and drive ourselves, the tires may have animal fat in them. We
Ooh,
can't control that. Yeah. And
wow.
so, yeah, there are going to be times where I have to participate in something where it is, and there are some vegan tires out there, by the way, but where I can control things and when I can educate someone, depending on how they're coming at me, there are times where I've met them with the same level of anger
Mhm.
that they've come at me with. And then other times I just talk about, how beautiful this life is and how freeing it is to be vegan in because of all of the ways that I'm not involved in a lot of the animal agriculture industry, and that I can, sleep comfortably at night knowing that I am not the reason why so many animals suffer and die every day. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I wish I had something a little more helpful. I guess my thought is like, just, why you're doing this. Don't feel like you have to back off because somebody doesn't understand it. And take a lesson from that I have learned from Jen. Always have a Lara bar in your bag.
I'm glad I imparted that Laura Bar wisdom on you,
Yeah, you
Kimberly.
really did. Saved me. So thank you. What about you? How do you handle such
Well,
situations?
first of all, I just want to say what you said I think is helpful,
Oh,
right? Because everyone's going to be in different everyone's got different personalities and everyone's going to be in different situations. And I think what you said at the end there, not about the Laura bar, although that is important, is about, not backing off or backing down because of, essentially, I forgot exactly how eloquently you said it, but basically not backing down because of how someone else thinks or feels, right? That was
yeah.
essentially what you're saying, like staying true to who you are. And
Mhm.
that looks and that looks differently to different people can communicate that in different ways.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's important to honor your values and not shrink yourself down
Yeah.
just to meet other people's comfort. And for me, it started off for the food, and then my commitment to veganism has been for the animals. And so when people, a lot of the time, so I've been in a lot of family events, weddings over the past, especially over the past few years, and other gatherings where family I don't see very often, and their guests will ask me, well, why are you vegan? And I'll tell them, it started off for the food, and then my commitment to it is for the animals. And I leave it at that. And then if they, and some people are like, okay, whatever. Well,
Mhm.
don't you miss it? Like, or, or all the other different things. And I try to talk about all how it made me an amazing cook. Right.
Mm.
So, and how I cook better as a vegan than before I was vegan. So for me, like I try to go at it for the food because everyone's connected to the food. That used to be me.
Yeah.
So I try to speak to that older version of myself when I was first, stepping into this world,
Mhm.
because it started with the food. And so I try to go from there. However, there are people who try to take it to the next level. Things like, well, it says in the Bible you can eat animals, right? That's
Mm.
my favorite one. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, great. I'm not going to do it, right? And And, or what about, the other one of, if you're on a desert island and, an animal's the only thing to eat, you know what I say? Well, I'm sure there's plants the animal's eating, so I'm going to go look for those first.
Also, here's another response, and I can't remember who I saw say this first online. Maybe it was Danny Shea, I think is his handle, but it was, or maybe it was another effing vegan. But either way, someone on the internet brilliantly said, "Okay, that's a situation that's never going to happen. However, you are currently in a situation where you do not have to eat animals. There are thousands of options out there for you. Why aren't you not eating animals?" And it kind of like stops people in their tracks because
Love it.
it's
I'm gonna
true.
I'm gonna borrow that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's such a good one. Right? Putting on questioning, flipping it around and making people think, which I know I talk about Earthling Ed all the time, but I just love his content because he's very big on debating people and asking questions. And his book, How to Argue with a Mediator, I read it last year. It elevated my ability to handle those situations even more,
Nice.
by just giving me all of that. And see, yeah, sometimes, and the other thing is too, sometimes people are going to get really belligerent and just try to bait you. It doesn't happen often, but once in a while you get people, they think they're being funny and they're
Mhm.
not. uh
Mhm.
so if it starts to get too charged, I will just say, look, I'm not telling you how to live your life. This is how I'm living mine, and I'm not going to discuss this anymore. And I just shut it down.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
that's it. I don't owe you an explanation for my life choices. You don't owe me an explanation for yours. So, you know what? We don't have to have this conversation anymore. So I
Yeah.
just kind of shut it down that way. And then the other tip I just want to throw out there that has been helpful for me is I try to now have a website or a resource for different things when people ask me questions. So if it's health stuff, I always direct them to Forks Over Knives because that was what I discovered in the beginning. That was my pathway to veganism,
Mhm.
was learning all this amazing healthy food. I wanted to eat healthy without feeling deprived, and Forks Over Knives was that gateway for me. So I always share that about food. And then I share, I share Earthling Ed for everything else because he's like a one-stop shop for everything else. So I feel like just having those resources where people can then look further on it,
Mhm.
because sometimes that was the other thing too. Like, oh my God, like now I'm getting more, now that especially since doing that vegan morning show with you, I'm getting more comfortable talking about all these topics because I'm researching them more and learning about them more. But
Yeah.
if people start asking me questions I don't know how to answer, which I think is a big question that comes up when I've talked to other people who are new in the vegan journey, just have some resources to direct people. You can
Mhm.
say, you know what, that's a lot to talk about right now in this setting, but here's a website you can go to that can answer all of your questions. So this way
Yeah.
it kind of offloads that pressure on yourself to feel like you have all the answers or feel like you need to have all the answers. So yeah,
Yeah. I
what about
love
you,
that.
Kimberly?
So going back to the comment that people have made to you about the Bible and saying that we can eat animals because it says so in the Bible, that depends on who you ask. Stephen Lee August, who wrote Vegans versus the Verses,
Mm,
he is a Christian and a vegan activist, and he is so eloquent and just really knows how to connect with people about the Bible. He knows it inside and out. That segment in Genesis that people typically use about dominion, he's like, you've got to read the whole thing. And dominion does not mean that you get to choose how you use someone. You're supposed to take care of them. That's what
mm.
this means. And
Love-
he's got
What's his
he
name again?
runs through Stephen Lee August.
Mm,
Yeah, he was on Did You Bring the Hummus? Later on, I'll link to the episode so people can listen
yeah.
if they'd like. But he really is great, and the book is really helpful. And he actually wrote the book really for even like atheists who get those questions when they're doing, activist work, and somebody is like, but the Bible says so. He's like, you don't have to be a Christian to be able to answer these questions. Here's this book. I've gone through the Bible. Here are all the places people think it's saying, go ahead and use animals or eat them. And here's actually what it means. And Victoria Moran too, she also believes that we're not supposed to be eating animals. And that if you read the Bible, the way it was intended, that it's saying exactly the opposite, that you're supposed to care for them. And then I had one more point, and now it is gone. And I meant to, oh no. Then you said about having resources for people. And that reminded me of Dawn Hilton Williams. She is the Vegucator. She's amazing. We used to do this show called the Vegan Stew on Wednesday evenings. I think they do it periodically now, but neither Dawn or I are part of it right now. But Dawn, her thing was, she has a note on her phone that has resources and quotes and things where she can even just airdrop it to you, or text it to you, where it's just quickly sent over. And now you have all of these resources that she uses regularly in order to learn more or feel supported. And it's just such a really smart way to put things together. So when somebody asks you that question, you've got a resource right there on your phone you can quickly send over. So really smart way to be ready for those types of things, like you were saying.
I love all of that. Those are really great tips, Kimberly. I'm definitely going to update my notes on my phone and have a vegan resource note. Thanks for sharing all of that. And yeah, I'm definitely going to check out those other resources for answering, about the Bible, because I feel like that's like an area where I feel very unconfident. So I just kind of like change the topic and be like, you know what, you do like my little, like, I don't want to talk about this anymore type of a thing. And, but I feel like that's an area that I need to work on. And, it's interesting. I never thought I would be a vegan activist. And as you were saying that, and now here I am in this world with you. And I really love that we get to have these really big, meaningful conversations. And I think we're just such great examples of how you can live your life and be a vegan. And we're not the only ones. There's lots of other great people out there, but you can live your life and people can live their lives, and you can find a way to make it work for yourself. And it's going to be uncomfortable at times. And, that's why we're doing the work that we're doing, because we want to help foster that connection that people have to veganism, or just support vegans where, in their lives, but also provide a space of education for any non-vegans that tune in as well. And, look, at one point we were not vegans, right? And we went on our journey, and it's just horrific what is, taught to us to be mainstream and acceptable. And I say this all the time. It's like the Matrix. Like, you wake up and you can't unknow it, and you see things differently. You start questioning things. And but I just, I know we got to wrap up in a minute, but for me, I have found more beauty and connectedness being vegan, and just having it with myself, and just, being more intentional. And just, I have found being vegan has given me more things and taken away things.
Yeah, same. And I think that helps with that loneliness. The topic of today's conversation is that even if we're alone, we don't have to be lonely. And we can find comfort and connection, both in finding a deeper connection to ourselves, like you were saying. And if you really feel lonely and you're not finding connection, please find us. Make comments on this video or any of our other videos, and just reach out. We're on Instagram, That Vegan Morning Show, and send us a message. Let's have a conversation. Let's find a way to be a community, because we are, like I said earlier at the start of the show, we're such a small amount of the population around the world. So if we can be here for each other, then let's do it, because we're only going to serve the animals better.
100%. I think that's a great way to wrap up this episode. I think we'll have to do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kimberly, it was so lovely as always hanging out with you early in the morning on a Monday.
That's right.
And if you're watching us now, I see we have one viewer. Thank you for watching right now. And the replays are up. I noticed we get a lot of watch time on replays. So let us know in the comments. Even if you don't have a question, let us know where you're watching from. Kimberly and I want to know who's tuning in.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's always fun for us.
It is.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.